Well, hello and welcome back to math class. You will notice on my screen, we're going to move on to section 3.5, which is rates and unit rates. This is actually from your textbook. It's page 135. What we're going to look at, and you're going to be surprised at how similar this is to what we've been doing in our 5 a day in the morning. You see here a clock, 2 times, 11:15 and 1:15. To me, that is a 2-hour time difference. And then I will see that the car has gone from here to here, meaning a total of 80 miles. Well, I can write a ratio or a rate, as it says, like this. I would say 2 to 80. 2 hours to 80 miles. Now, I can use this information and I can actually solve some different problems. I could actually find out how far the car could go in 1 hour, how many miles. If I wanted to, we're going to learn how today to actually take this information. And what if I wanted to find out how far the car could go in 3 hours and 25 hundredths? We're actually going to be able to solve some problems like this as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and open up your math notebook for us to write some things down. All right, so what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to go ahead and write this down in your notebook for me. Oh, that light's a little bright, so we'll leave it like that. The title of our lesson is going to be, as you can see, rates and unit rates. And then we're going to do a little activity real quick, which you're going to need to know for your homework today. Your teachers are probably going to start laughing when they start hearing you starting to clap. All right, so what we're going to do is when I tell you to begin, I'm going to ask you to start clapping. When I ask you to start clapping, I want you to clap and I want you to count how many times that you can clap your hands in 12 seconds. Okay, are you ready? On your marks, get set, go. All right, would you stop, please? And write down for me the amount of claps that you got in 12 seconds. Okay, whether it was 20, 30, 40, 50, just write down how many claps. Let's just say I had this many, for example. We're going to use this information. Now remember, this was 35 claps in 12 seconds. Okay, so now you need to write down what your claps were. You can actually use this rate to solve some different things. You can find out how many claps you could do in 1 second. We're going to need to know this number for your homework today. So make sure that you have this written down in your notes. All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so the first thing I'd like for you to write in your notes is what a unit rate is. A unit rate compares a quantity to 1 unit of another quantity. So let's go ahead and write that in our notes so we can make sure we understand what a unit rate is. So for example, I could say that it is $9 for 1 pizza. Okay, I have 1 unit here for my 1 pizza, and I'm comparing it to another quantity of $9. This would be considered a unit rate. 9 pizzas, or I'm sorry, $9, 1 pizza. All right, so the next thing I'd like for you to go ahead and write in your notes is equivalent rates. What are equivalent rates? Equivalent rates have the same unit rate. Okay, so let's go ahead and write this down, and then I will show you what I mean by an example. So my example would be something like this. The unit rate I had here was $9 for 1 pizza. An equivalent rate would be, well, what if I would want 3 pizzas? What would that cost me? It cost me $27. These two are equivalent rates. And we remember that some of us did something that we kind of called Wonder Woman. It looked like a W here. So we took 9 times 3 to get 27, and 3 times 3, or I'm sorry, 1 times 3 equals 3. These are equivalent rates. Equivalent rates. All right, so in your notes, I'd like for you to go ahead and make this ratio table that I've created. We're going to make some fruit juice, and we're going to add, as you can see, 4 pints of water for every 2 cups of concentrate. Okay, what I want to know is if I wanted to fill in the rest of my ratio table, but I wanted to find a unit rate. Now remember, unit rate means I want to find to the quantity of 1. I would like to find the unit rate of where if I had 1 cup of concentrate, 1 cup of concentrate, right? Well, most of us can see here, in order to go from here to here, we actually took 2 and we divided it by 2, which means we're going to do the exact same thing up here. And so we found out, according to this, our unit rate was 2 pints of water to 1 cup of concentrate. This is our unit rate. All right, well, if you notice, I have the exact same table. Go ahead and draw this in your notes. But as you're putting in your notes, you're going to notice I actually changed something. If you notice, I reversed the order. Instead of putting the water on the top, I have the concentrate on the top. And the reason why I did that is what happens if I would want to find out the unit rate? And instead of the unit rate being 1 cup of concentrate, what if I would want to know how much concentrate would I need if I used 1 pint of water? How would I find out what my unit rate would be in this situation? Well, if I look, how did I go from 4 to 1? Well, I took 4 and I divided it by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Well, how am I going to take 2 divided by 4? Well, 2 divided by 4 for me would be something like this. 2 divided by 4. Right? We've learned that before, that this actually means division. This is actually a fraction, and I can actually reduce that fraction. Most of us remember that if I reduce this fraction, it would be 1/2. So now I have found for 1 pint, I'm going to have 1/2 cup of concentrate. So the unit rate for this one would look a little bit different. The unit rate for this one would be 1/2 to 1. All right, so this is where you're going to have to do a little bit of work for me. So go ahead and make your this next table claps compared to seconds. And if you will notice, I left the number of claps blank because I don't remember what your number of claps was that you received in 12 seconds. Whatever your number was, I'd like for you to write that in the table right there. Then I would like to see if you could solve how many claps you had per second. Per second, 1 second. So for example, if you remember, I think I wrote down on mine that I did 35 claps per second, or I'm sorry, in 12 seconds. In order for me to find out how many claps I did in 1 second, so obviously we all are going to divide by 12 here to get this, which means I'm going to have to divide by 12 up here. That's not going to come out very evenly, so I'm going to do something like this, 35 divided by 12, and then I'm going to have to simplify that fraction, which we've done before. For me, mine's a top-heavy fraction, which I'm sure some of yours might be as well. So I'm going to do something like this. Goes in there twice. Not sure why I did that, because I could actually do 5 minus 4 is 1, and 3 minus 2 is 1. Boy, it's been a long morning already. So my answer is 2 and 11 twelfths. 2 and 11 twelfths. So for me, if I was going to write my unit rate, I was able to do 2 and 11 twelfths of a clap per second, per second. Okay, so find out how many claps or part of a clap you can do per second. And obviously, when I find out how many claps I can do per second, now I can actually find out how many claps I can do in 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and so forth, because obviously if I'm going to do it 2 seconds, I'm going to take this answer times 2. If I wanted to know how many claps I could do in 3 seconds, I'm going to take this answer times 3. All right, so let's go ahead and move on a little bit. I'd like for you to go ahead and make this next ratio table, and then we're going to solve some problems together here. Okay, so you notice I have distance. We're going to do it in miles. Time is going to be in seconds. I have 3 boxes on the top of our ratio table and obviously 3 on the bottom. The story is as follows. A piece of space junk travels 5 miles every 6 seconds. Okay, so our rate we have right here is 5 miles in 6 seconds, which would be something like this. Okay, my question is, if this piece of space junk can travel 5 miles in every 6 seconds, is it possible for you to find out how far the space junk will travel in 30 seconds? So put a 30 seconds over here for me. Now, before I want us to solve this, which seems pretty simple, I want us to find the unit rate, the unit rate. Now, if you recall, unit rate is with the number 1. I would like to know how far this piece of junk, space junk, will travel in 1 second. 1 second. So I'd like for you to go ahead and pause your video if you can and see if you can fill in this blank for me and this blank for me. And when you think you've solved it, go ahead and unpause your video. All right, well, in order to go from 6 here to 1, we divided by 6, which means I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to divide by 6. And we learned earlier that to do 5 divided by 6, we are going to just write it as a fraction. So in 1 second, our piece of space junk can go 5/6 miles. So my rate or unit rate would be 5/6 to 1. To go from 1 second to 30 seconds, we obviously took this and we multiplied it times 30. We're actually going to do the same thing up here. We're going to take 5/6 times 30. And if you took 5/6 times 30, you probably found out that the answer is 25. Some of you actually looked closely and realized that you could actually go from 5 times 5 up here to 25 because 6 times 5 is 30. So there's a couple ways you could solve this. So the ratios that we have, the equivalent ratios is 5 to 6, 5/6 to 1, or our last one is 25 to 30. We learned in the last lesson that all 3 of these ratios or rates are equivalent to each other. So let's go ahead and turn this around. Instead of putting the distance on the top this time, let's do our time first and our distance second. We still have the same situation though, and the situation was the space junk can travel 5 miles in 6 seconds. This time I'd like for you to find for a unit rate, instead of finding out how far the junk could go in 1 second, I would like to see how many seconds it takes for your junk to go 1 mile. 1 mile. All right, well, in order to go from 5 to 1, we divided by 5 here, which means we're going to do the exact same thing up here, and we're going to write it like this, 6 divided by 5. What if I wanted to know how many seconds does it take the space junk to travel 2 miles? What would my answer here be? Well, now that I know that how far it can go in 1 mile, I could take this and I could multiply times 2 here, which means I could multiply by 2 here. All right, so if I take my 6/5 here times 2, and I probably will do that right here, 6/5 times 2. And we know that that's 2 over 1, which actually is 12 over 5. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that right here, 12 over 5. So I found that in 2 miles, my space junk goes 12/5 of a second. My space junk will go 2 miles. So I once again have these 3 rates or ratios that are equivalent to 1, and then 12/5 to 2. Okay. All right, last thing I'd like to show you, and you don't have to write this in your notes unless you'd like to, but you are going to have a problem in your homework today that is similar to this. So if you notice, I've given you all kinds of rates, right? 8 pounds for every 2 feet, 20 pounds per 4 feet, 12 pounds per 3 feet, and 24 pounds for every 6 feet. So I'm comparing 2 different quantities, right? Pounds and feet. I would like to know which one of these doesn't belong, which means all of these, the other 3 are going to be equivalent. Well, what I would probably do is I would look at my rates, and I have here 8 to 2. I have here 20 to 4. The next one I have was 12 to 3, and I have 24 to 6. Now, some of you that know your math facts already can see which one doesn't belong. The rest of us, we're going to have to kind of look to solve these. What I would do is I would look at my ratio and I would simplify or reduce it. We remember how to do that. Some of us do our little the ladder method, which is fine if you want to do that. So I look at 8 and 2. I find a common factor that goes into both of them. Well, it's going to be 2. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 2 once. So this one here will simplify to 4 to 1. Let's see what this one over here will simplify to. Well, if I did this again, what goes into both of them? 4 goes into both. 4 goes into 25 times, and 4 goes into 4 once. So it looks like this one's going to simplify 5 to 1. All right, well, obviously one of these is not going to go because they're not equivalent. Let's see what happens down here. If I simplify 12 to 3, I know that 3 goes into both of them. This one actually would simplify. And if you want to go ahead and do it like this, just work on it, you can. But I know that this one's going to simplify to 4 to 1. And if I look at this one over here, and if I want to simplify this, I know 6 goes into both of them. 6 goes into this one's going to simplify to 4 to 1 as well. So if you notice, these are equivalent, whereas this unit rate is not equivalent. So if I would look up here, which rate does not belong? Well, the one that does not belong was my 20 pounds per 4 feet. All right, like I said, this is going to be one of very similar to one of the problems you have in your homework today. Your homework is actually going to be on page 139. Okay. It will actually go on to 140 as well, it looks like. You are going to start with problem number 6, and you are going to turn over and you're going to go all the way to problem 32, and I would like for you to do the even problems. All right, so if you need any help, please reach out to the teachers out in the classroom so that they can assist you with your homework.